Venice, 1497. In the bustling markets of the Maritime Republic, a merchant hands over the equivalent of 3 kilograms of pure gold. His purchase? Merely a few grams of black peppercorns. At this very moment, thousands of miles away, a Portuguese ship sets sail from the port of Lisbon, its crew determined to break the iron grip on this lucrative trade. These tiny black seeds, no larger than a pearl, commanded the same value as precious metals in the markets of Europe. Merchants would risk life and fortune, sailing into unknown waters, facing pirates and treacherous storms, all for a cargo hold filled with peppercorns, cinnamon, and cloves. But what made these simple spices worth their weight in gold? Picture a medieval European table, bland, unseasoned meat, often on the verge of spoiling. Now imagine the transformative power of these aromatic treasures from the East, not just enhancing flavor, but preserving food and even serving as medicine. In the quest to control this spice trade, empires would rise and fall. The ancient trade routes that had carried these precious commodities for centuries would be disrupted forever. Portuguese caravels would forge new paths across vast oceans, leading to encounters that would redraw the map of the world. This is not just a story about trade. It's a tale of human ambition, innovation, and the dawn of the first truly global economy. As we follow these maritime routes across the Indian Ocean, we'll discover how a handful of spices changed the course of human history. If you're fascinated by the mysteries and revolutions of the modern age, this journey through time is just beginning. Join our community of history enthusiasts by hitting the like button and subscribing to Modern Age Chronicles. Together, we'll explore history as you've never seen it before. Let's set sail into one of the most fascinating chapters of human civilization. Our story interweaves the lives of 3 remarkable figures who shaped the destiny of the spice trade, each representing a different facet of this global saga. Vasco da Gama emerges as a complex figure, shaped by the Portuguese maritime tradition. Picture him standing on the shores of Calicut in 1498, his eyes widening at the sight of warehouses overflowing with pepper, cinnamon, and precious gems. His personal journals reveal a man torn between overwhelming ambition and the crushing weight of responsibility. Da Gama writes of sleepless nights aboard the São Gabriel, wrestling with decisions that would affect not just his crew, but the future of his nation. In his detailed logbooks, we find intimate descriptions of his daily life at sea. He meticulously records the first time he tastes the pungent bite of fresh pepper in India, describing it as fire turned to seed. His writings reveal both the hardened commander who would ruthlessly pursue Portuguese interests and the curious explorer who carefully documented new spices, flavors, and customs. Sultan al-Malik al-Ashraf Kansa al-Ghuri stands as a tragic figure in this transformative period. The last Mamluk Sultan of Egypt watches as centuries of trade dominance begin to crumble. In his ornate palace in Cairo, he receives increasingly desperate reports of Portuguese ships circumventing the traditional trade routes. His diplomatic correspondence with Venice reveals sophisticated attempts to maintain control, negotiating complex trade agreements while simultaneously organizing naval resistance against Portuguese expansion. The Sultan's personal letters to Venice show a ruler who deeply understood the stakes. This is not merely about spices, he writes, but about the very foundations of our world. His alliance with Venice represents the old order's last stand against the emerging age of European maritime empires. Admiral Zheng, he provides a crucial counterpoint to the European narrative. Decades before da Gama's voyage, this Chinese admiral commanded vast treasure fleets that dwarfed European vessels. A Muslim in the Ming court, standing over 7 feet tall, Zheng he blazed trading routes from China through the Indian Ocean, reaching as far as Africa's eastern coast. His detailed diplomatic records reveal a different approach to maritime power, focusing on trade networks and cultural exchange rather than territorial conquest. Zheng He's ships carried not just Chinese silk and porcelain, but also astronomers, artists, and diplomats. His expeditions established a sophisticated trading network that would later astonish Portuguese explorers. When these 3 worlds collided, Portuguese expansion, Arab-Egyptian trade dominance, and Chinese maritime influence, the resulting conflict and competition would reshape global commerce. Through their eyes, we witness the birth pangs of the modern global economy, where ancient trade routes gave way to new maritime empires, and where the scent of spices would forever be mingled with the smell of gunpowder and the ink of treaties. Their personal stories, preserved in logbooks, diplomatic correspondence, and court records, offer us an intimate window into one of history's great turning points, when the quest for spices redrew the maps of power and commerce across 3 continents. Step with me into the vibrant world of the spice markets, where the air itself tells stories of distant lands. In Calicut's Grand Bazaar, the rhythmic chants of Arabic merchants blend with Portuguese negotiations and local Malayalam dialects. The morning air fills with the sharp crack of peppercorns being sampled, while merchants break open cardamom pods to release their intense aroma. Massive hemp sacks, stretched to bursting with black peppercorns, line the stone warehouses. Nearby, delicate Persian scales weigh saffron worth more than gold, thread by precious thread. Traders move through these spaces like living exhibits of the ancient world's diversity. Arab merchants glide past in their flowing thobs, their success displayed in the fine embroidery of their garments. Gujarat traders stand out in their bright turbans and silk kurtas, while Chinese merchants are distinguished by their elegant Hanfu robes. Portuguese traders, still adjusting to the heat, wear lighter versions of their European doublets. In Malacca, where the straight narrows and fortunes are made, we find perhaps the world's most diverse trading hub. Here, Javanese junks dock alongside Arab dhows and Chinese treasure ships. The port's famous covered market stretches nearly a mile, sheltering precious cloves from the Moluccas, nutmeg from the Banda Islands, and cinnamon from Ceylon. The air is thick with the mingled scents of durian fruit, burning incense, and sea salt. Alexandria stands as the gateway where east meets west. In its ancient harbors, carved from limestone millennia ago, spices begin their final journey to Europe. The city's famous lighthouse watches over warehouses where spices are repackaged for Mediterranean travel. Arab and Jewish merchants maintain complex accounting records in multiple languages, calculating profits in currencies from Venice to Canton. And finally, Venice, La Serenissima, where the wealth of the spice trade transforms into Renaissance splendor. The Rialto Bridge arches over waters crowded with gondolas and merchant galleys. In the covered spice warehouse, the Fondaco dei Tedeschi, German merchants trade alongside Venetians. The sweet smell of success pervades the air, cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves destined for Europe's finest tables. Each port tells its own story through smells and sounds. The creak of wooden ships' hulls against stone quays, the flutter of cotton sails being furled, the calls to prayer echoing across harbors, and always the persistent aroma of spices: sharp black pepper, sweet cinnamon, pungent garlic, exotic cardamom. In these markets, every transaction weaves together languages, cultures, and traditions. A single sale might involve 5 languages, 3 currencies, and complex calculations made on Arabic numerals. Deals are sealed not just with signatures, but with ritual sharing of spiced tea or coffee, each cup a small ceremony celebrating the intricate dance of global trade. These weren't just marketplaces, they were the nodes of the world's first global network, where ideas, technologies, and cultures flowed as freely as the spices themselves. Through these ports and markets, we witness not just commerce, but the birth of our modern, interconnected world. Our story begins in the bustling ports of Alexandria and Venice, where Arab and Venetian merchants held an iron grip on the European spice trade. For centuries, this powerful duopoly controlled every grain of pepper and stick of cinnamon that reached European tables. Spices would journey from Asia across the Indian Ocean in Arab dhows, travel overland through Egypt, and finally reach Venice in Venetian galleys. This monopoly made both Venice and the Mamluk Sultanate fabulously wealthy, but it kept Europe starved for spices and paying prices worth their weight in gold. Enter the Portuguese, dreaming of breaking this monopoly. Picture Prince Henry the Navigator in his windswept tower at Sagres, poring over maps and interviewing sailors. Under his guidance, Portuguese ships crept further and further down Africa's western coast. Each expedition ventured a bit further, mapped a bit more coastline, until finally, Bartolomé Dias rounded the Cape of Good Hope in 1488, proving a sea route to the east was possible. The story reaches its crescendo with Vasco da Gama's arrival in Calicut in 1498. Imagine the moment: Portuguese ships, their crosses blazing in the tropical sun, dropping anchor in an Indian harbor for the first time in history. The monopoly that had stood for centuries was shattered in a single moment. Da Gama's men fell to their knees on Indian soil, while local merchants wondered at these strange newcomers who had arrived from the wrong direction. But the Portuguese arrival sparked a series of dramatic conflicts. The Venetians and Arabs wouldn't surrender their profitable trade without a fight. Portuguese ships engaged in fierce battles with Arab fleets. The waters of the Indian Ocean, once a peaceful trading zone, became a battleground. Meanwhile, Portuguese diplomats and merchants worked to establish trading posts (vitórias) along Africa's eastern coast and India's shores. Each outpost became a link in a new global trading network. The transformation that followed was unprecedented. Spice prices in Europe plummeted. Venetian palaces emptied as Portuguese ships bypassed the old routes. New trading cities rose: Goa, Malacca, Macau. Perhaps most significantly, the world's first truly global trade network emerged. Portuguese ships would carry silver from America to Europe, exchange it for African gold, trade that for Asian spices, and sell those spices back in Europe. What alternate history might have unfolded if the Portuguese had never found this route? Would another European power have discovered it? Would the Arab-Venetian monopoly have persisted? Would the Chinese treasure fleets have returned to dominate these waters? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to Modern Age Chronicles for more fascinating historical narratives. This isn't just a story about spices. It's the story of how our modern global economy was born. It's a tale of innovation, courage, and the unintended consequences of human ambition. In breaking one monopoly, the Portuguese created the template for European maritime empires that would shape the world for centuries to come. Let's dive into the remarkable historical evidence that brings the spice trade to life through both written records and archaeological discoveries. Vasco da Gama's journal stands as one of our most valuable primary sources. His detailed accounts, preserved in Portugal's National Archives, offer intimate glimpses of the journey. On May 20, 1498, he writes, "The pilot came aboard my ship bringing 14 pieces of cotton and coconuts. We saw here parrots, larger and more beautiful than any we had yet seen." These personal observations capture not just historical facts, but the wonder of first contact between Europe and India. Venetian merchant correspondence provides a fascinating counterpoint. In letters discovered in the Venetian state archives, we find increasingly panicked reports about Portuguese activities. One merchant writes in 1501, "The Portuguese devils have found their way around Africa, and our spice trade faces ruin." These letters reveal how quickly Venice recognized the existential threat to their commercial empire. Price records from European markets tell an extraordinary economic story. A ledger from Florence's Medici Bank shows pepper prices plummeting by 40% between 1498 and 1520. Similar records from London's spice merchants document how previously exotic spices became increasingly accessible to middle-class households. Arab cartography provides crucial insights into Indian Ocean navigation before European arrival. The famous Arab navigator Ahmad ibn Majid's maps show intricate detail of winds, currents, and ports across the Indian Ocean. These maps demonstrate the sophisticated maritime knowledge that existed in the East long before European exploration. Archaeological evidence has been equally revealing. Off the coast of Kerala, India, divers discovered a Portuguese shipwreck from 1503, its cargo hold still containing perfectly preserved peppercorns in sealed amphorae. The wreck provides valuable information about storage methods and cargo capacity of early Portuguese trading vessels. In Malacca, excavations of 15th century warehouses have revealed sophisticated storage systems. Archaeologists found specially designed rooms with climate control features to preserve different types of spices. Clay floors were sloped for drainage, while ventilation shafts helped regulate humidity. The numismatic evidence is particularly fascinating. Coin hoards found in Indian Ocean ports show an incredible mix of currencies: Venetian ducats, Portuguese cruzados, Ottoman aci, and Chinese cash coins, all circulating together. This physical evidence confirms the truly international nature of the spice trade. Recent underwater archaeology in the Red Sea has uncovered several Arab trading vessels with their cargoes intact. One ship, dating to the late 15th century, contained not only spices but also detailed cargo manifests written on waterproof palm leaves, providing unprecedented insights into trading volumes and methods. In European museums, preserved spice samples from shipwrecks allow us to analyze the exact varieties of spices being traded. Using modern techniques like gas chromatography, scientists have identified specific compounds that reveal not just what was being traded, but where it originated. Personal items found in shipwrecks humanize these trading voyages. Prayer beads from multiple religions, personal letters, and even musical instruments show us the cultural exchange that accompanied commerce. A Portuguese sailor's chest found off the African coast contained both European playing cards and Indian chess pieces. These diverse sources, when pieced together, create a rich tapestry of evidence that confirms and expands our understanding of this pivotal period in world history. From the written words of those who lived it to the silent testimony of archaeological remains, we can reconstruct not just the economic impact of the spice trade, but its profound effect on human culture and society. They remind us that history isn't just found in books. It's preserved in the seabed, buried in ancient ports, and hidden in archived letters, waiting to be discovered and tell its story. The discovery of the sea route to India set in motion a chain of events that would fundamentally reshape the world economy and human civilization. Let's first examine the immediate shockwaves that rippled through Europe and Asia. In Venice, the impact was devastating and swift. Within just 2 decades, spice prices in European markets plunged by up to 60%. The magnificent palazzos along the Grand Canal, built on spice trade profits, suddenly stopped their expansion. Venetian shipping schedules, once clockwork regular, became sporadic as their vessels returned half-empty from Alexandria. In Portugal, the transformation was equally dramatic but triumphant. Lisbon exploded from a modest port into one of Europe's wealthiest cities. The Portuguese crown's income multiplied several times over. New shipyards sprang up along the Tagus River, while schools of navigation and cartography flourished. Portugal's population could suddenly afford spices that were once reserved for nobility. But the most profound changes would unfold over centuries, creating structures and systems we still see today. Consider the Portuguese East India Company and its later Dutch and British counterparts. These were the world's first multinational corporations. They pioneered concepts we take for granted: stock markets, overseas banking, marine insurance, and modern accounting practices. When you see today's global corporations, you're looking at the descendants of these spice trading companies. The revolution in navigation technology was extraordinary. Portuguese cartographers developed new methods of mapping prevailing winds and currents. Their navigational instruments became more precise, leading to innovations we still use today. The system of latitude and longitude, standardized during this period, remains fundamental to modern GPS technology. The cultural exchange was perhaps even more significant than the economic impact. Portuguese sailors returned with not just spices, but new ideas, art forms, and technologies. Indian textiles transformed European fashion. Chinese porcelain inspired European pottery innovations. New words entered European languages. Words like monsoon, cargo, and bazaar trace their etymology to this period of exchange. In the realm of cuisine, the changes were revolutionary. European cooking, traditionally heavy and bland, was transformed by the availability of spices. New preservation techniques using spices helped develop food storage methods. The concept of fusion cuisine began as Portuguese cooks combined Asian spices with European techniques. But perhaps the most lasting impact was the birth of economic globalization. For the first time in history, a price change in Malacca would affect markets in London within months. A poor harvest in Kerala would influence banking decisions in Antwerp. The world had become interconnected in ways that would only grow stronger over time. The navigational revolution also had unexpected environmental impacts. European ships carried new plants and animals between continents, beginning what scientists now call the Columbian Exchange. Some of these transfers were beneficial, like the introduction of chili peppers to Asia, while others had unintended consequences that we're still dealing with today. The establishment of permanent trading posts led to the development of unique hybrid cultures. In places like Macau, Goa, and Malacca, new communities emerged, blending European, Asian, and African influences. These communities created their own languages, cuisines, and artistic traditions, many of which survive to this day. The spice routes also established patterns of global trade that persist in modern shipping lanes. Today's container ships often follow paths first mapped by Portuguese caravels, while modern financial centers like Singapore and Hong Kong owe their positions to this earlier age of commerce. Perhaps most importantly, this period marked humanity's first step toward a truly global consciousness. People began to think of the world as interconnected, leading to new ideas about international law, diplomatic relations, and cultural exchange. The concepts of international trade agreements, diplomatic missions, and cultural diversity that we take for granted today have their roots in this remarkable period. This wasn't just an economic revolution, it was the beginning of our modern, globalized world. The spice routes didn't just connect continents, they connected humanity in ways that continue to shape our world today. The spice trade era marked one of humanity's greatest periods of technological and cultural advancement. Let me take you through these remarkable developments that forever changed how humans navigated, built ships, preserved food, and understood their world. In navigation, Portuguese sailors revolutionized how we traversed the seas. They perfected the use of the astronomical quadrant, allowing them to determine latitude with unprecedented accuracy. The Carrack's crow's nest became a floating observatory, where navigators tracked the stars and recorded detailed measurements. They mastered the complex system of Atlantic wind patterns, discovering the Volta du Mar, the return voyage technique that utilized circular wind patterns to sail back to Europe. The art of shipbuilding underwent a dramatic transformation. Portuguese carracks emerged as masterpieces of naval engineering. Their hull designs incorporated revolutionary features: reinforced keels that could withstand ocean storms, multiple masts with a complex arrangement of square and lateen sails, and enhanced cargo holds that could carry months of provisions. These ships grew larger and more sophisticated, with some carrying up to 800 tons of cargo, a remarkable achievement for the time. Food preservation witnessed extraordinary innovation. Sailors developed new techniques for storing perishables during long voyages. They discovered that certain spices, particularly pepper and cloves, could preserve meat for months. They created sophisticated barrel systems for storing water, using charcoal filters to keep it fresh. Wine barrels were refined to prevent spoilage, becoming vital not just for drinking but for trading. Cartography flourished into both a science and an art. The Pedreiro Reel, Portugal's secret master map, was continuously updated with new discoveries. Cartographers developed new symbols and conventions for marking dangerous reefs, safe harbors, and prevailing winds. They created the first detailed maps of the Indian Ocean's monsoon patterns, essential knowledge for timing long voyages. The medical understanding of spices transformed European healthcare. Physicians discovered that cloves could relieve toothache, while ginger proved effective against nausea. Pepper was found to have antimicrobial properties, while cinnamon helped preserve other medicines. The spice trade gave birth to modern pharmacology, as apothecaries began systematically studying and documenting the medical properties of these exotic substances. European cuisine underwent nothing short of a revolution. Before the spice trade, medieval European cooking relied heavily on masking the taste of barely preserved meat. With the influx of spices, cooking became an art form. Nutmeg and mace added depth to sauces, while pepper brought warmth to dishes without overwhelming heat. Cinnamon transformed desserts, while cloves and cardamom created entirely new flavor profiles unknown to European palates. Food preservation techniques developed during this period still influence modern methods. The combination of salt curing with spices led to new forms of charcuterie. Spiced vinegars emerged as powerful preservatives, while sugar preservation techniques, learned from Arab traders, revolutionized fruit conservation. These innovations not only improved food safety, but created entirely new categories of preserved foods that became delicacies in their own right. This period represents humanity's first great leap toward globalized knowledge and technology. The innovations born from the spice trade didn't just change how humans traveled, ate, and healed. They fundamentally altered how we understood our world and our capabilities within it. These advancements laid the foundation for the scientific and culinary revolutions that would follow, echoing through centuries to influence how we live today. Let's explore some fascinating parallels between the spice trade and our modern world, examining how past and present interweave in surprising ways. Think about your smartphone for a moment. Just as black pepper once traveled thousands of miles from Malabar to reach European tables, the components in your phone have crossed oceans and continents. A single iPhone contains minerals from Africa, processors from Taiwan, and assembly work from China. Like the spice trade, modern commerce relies on complex networks spanning the globe. But while a spice cargo might take years to reach its destination, today's supply chains operate in days or weeks. Consider how the spice routes shaped global culture. Portuguese sailors introduced chili peppers to India, forever transforming its cuisine. Today, K-pop music travels digital routes to influence teenagers in Brazil, while African fashion trends reshape European streetwear. The medieval merchant spice-laden dhow has become today's internet cable, carrying cultural cargo at the speed of light. What are today's equivalents to premium spices? Rare earth elements, perhaps those crucial components for modern technology. Or consider truffles, which still command astronomical prices rivaling medieval pepper. But maybe the closest parallel is data, invisible, invaluable, and capable of making fortunes for those who control its flow. Like pepper in 1500, data in 2024 shapes empires and transforms societies. The story of technological disruption repeats itself. Just as Portuguese caravels disrupted the Venetian Arab spice monopoly, blockchain technology now challenges traditional banking. The merchant's ledger has become digital, but the fundamental dance of innovation and established power continues. Look at how trade shapes geopolitics. The Strait of Malacca, once crucial for the spice trade, remains one of the world's most strategic waterways. Modern nations vie for control of trade routes just as empires once did, though now they're often pipelines and shipping lanes rather than spice roads. What trading routes are being forged today that will reshape our world tomorrow? Perhaps the Northwest Passage, opened by melting ice, will become the new spice route of the 21st century. Or maybe the next great trade routes will be quantum internet connections, carrying information instead of cardamom and cloves. Here's a thought to ponder. What common item today might become as precious as spices were 500 years ago? Fresh water? Clean air? Genetic information? Just as medieval Europeans could hardly imagine pepper becoming commonplace, we might be taking for granted things that will be precious to future generations. The lessons of the spice trade echo through time. They remind us that trade routes are never just about commerce. They're about the exchange of ideas, the clash of cultures, and the advance of human knowledge. Today's digital Silk Roads and electronic marketplace continue this ancient tradition of connecting humanity through commerce. If you've journeyed with us this far through the spice routes of history, you're truly a passionate historian at heart. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think will be the spices of the future? What modern trade routes fascinate you? Share your insights in the comments below. Don't forget to join our community of history enthusiasts by subscribing to Modern Age Chronicles. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this historical journey, and ring the notification bell to stay updated on more fascinating stories from the past that illuminate our present. Join us next time as we continue to explore the incredible tales that shaped our world. Until then, keep your curiosity burning as bright as a Portuguese navigator's star charts. Remember, in understanding our past, we better navigate our future. See you in our next historical adventure.